And welcome back. I'm John Pawlak, your host. And if you remember during the first segment, we had started talking about salt cedars, and I hate salt cedars. But Darrell was mentioning about salt cedars. Where were we going with this discussion?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things is to make sure that we have programs in place to help remove it. It's salt cedars are definitely a large water user, and there's of course, times changed. At one point in time, the government was giving these away for free to plant as windbreaks, so that's why we have so many of them in the valley. But they are more like a weed. They'll spread on their own. They will grow rapidly, and they use lots of water. So it's not the type of preferred landscaping that we truly have in the valley, but it's going to take a while to get rid of them. We just need to make sure we put in place some programs to do so.
And they change the soil so nothing else can live there after they're through. So
Right.
you have to amend the soil quite a bit to start something else after you remove these salt cedars. And you have to rip them out, because if you just cut them off, they'll be coming back. There's ways to do it, and people have to be bonded to do that. They have to know how to use the different types of herbicides, is the word?
Yes.
And so don't, if you're doing it yourself, be careful. Don't do it when it's a windy day or anything, and be careful of the other plants, because you go to Star Nursery, Home Depot, they'll be able to tell you what you can use, but they're very invasive, and they're cousins, the athels, which is like a evergreen. It stays green all year. They suck up a lot of water also. If you look at the boundary for the Binion property, that's all athels over there. That's a beautiful windbreak. But every couple of years, Valley Electric is over there cutting them back because they grow so rapidly. Otherwise, they'll just break off and cut our power. So that's one of the bad things, one of the many bad things about them. They'll suck up 100 to 300 gallons of water each day, the salt cedars. So
Other conservation measures that, is to make sure that people are utilizing, drip irrigation and other types of low water use technologies for their yards. Making sure that we're not having, grass is not good for just aesthetic purposes, just to give you greenery, because they're very high water users as well. We're not saying that we want to totally get rid of grass, because there are some areas like sports fields or other places where multiple use activities occur where people actually utilize the grass that it might be appropriate for the community to have some grass, but
Right.
just to have large expanses of green just for the sake of being green is not something that we're going to really have the water available for that. So it's always a balancing act. I mentioned ribs a while ago. The whole where is the water being pumped and where is it being recharged issues, or redistribution of pumping, aquifer storage and recovery projects. Those are the types of things we'll be looking at as well. Like I say, the basin is not uniform. Some areas of the basin, the water level's dropping. Some areas of the basin, water levels are increasing. So we'll try to find ways to make sure that we're pumping where the water's available and trying to reduce the demand in areas where the water levels are dropping. Maybe even through the use of ribs, we'll try to place the ribs in areas where the water level's dropping to help
interesting.
increase it in the areas. So just target where we're going to be doing that. Some of the springs and stuff are popping back up in the valleys, so there might even be, like I said, aquifer storage and recovery type projects, as we actually may target pumping in some areas so we don't waste water in springs that aren't being utilized, and try to pump it into areas of the valley or let it flow downhill into areas of the valley to keep the cost as reasonable, and recharge it back in those areas.
Right.
So there's several pieces of the puzzle there. And the other big piece of the puzzle that we have to deal with on the groundwater management plan is water rights and getting rid of the excess water rights.
So how do we do that?
Well, as I mentioned before, we're trying to let growth pay for itself. So currently today, the majority of that's being occurred is anybody that comes in with new subdivisions or new parcel maps has to bring excess water to the table and retire it to the basin. So it's not something that we're going to be using taxpayer money to go out and buy water rights for retirement. We're trying to let the growth pay for that. So anybody who wants to come in and build something new. We've been doing that for years through parcel maps and subdivision, but we have been steadily increasing that requirement, making sure that all commercial activities are addressing that as they come in with some new commercial activity. So all of our conditional use permits or special use permits or zone changes and stuff will be looking at water usage and making sure that people not only bring water to the table for what their usage is, but bring some extra to the table and relinquish it to the basin to get rid of that over allocation of water rights that we have in the valley.
So we don't really, I remember years ago we were always discussing about we don't really know how much recharge there is on our side of the mountain. We just take a shot at it?
The Department of Water Resources increased our perennial yield last year from 12,000 acre feet to 20,000 acre feet.
Which was great, yeah, because there was really a low bar.
And it was fairly obvious, and a lot of the scientific studies that are done looking at vegetation and evapotranspiration and other types of things that occur in the various valleys. But bottom line is an actual pump test is your best way of doing it. And one of the things that the Department of Water Resources said is really Pahrump has already been doing a 50-year experiment, because during the heavy agricultural days, we actually pumped as much as 47,000 acre feet of water in 1 year. The water levels were dropping all through the valley very rapidly, so we knew it's very easy to tell that 47,000 was much in excess of what we had available to us. But after the spring started drying up, after we started moving from an agricultural to more of a residential and suburban type community, the pumpage has dropped off significantly. And by looking at the water levels versus the pumping that we've done, they've been able to, I think, come up with something that's pretty close, at least in the areas where the town of Pahrump is. Now, the Basin 162 also is a large basin that goes all the way south into Clark County, picks up Trout Canyon and Lovell Canyon is a separate basin down there, but Trout Canyon, Carpenter Canyon, those areas, if there is any water recharge off the mountains, that water probably is moving to the south of town, and we're not picking that water up.
Okay.
And so there might be some additional water available to us to the south of town. But as always, everybody wants access to the water that they have, and that water is going somewhere and being used by someone. So there's never any free water available. As you mentioned, long term, if we want to look at a larger population base in Pahrump, then the importation is probably necessary, but that's a 50 years in the future type thing, I think. That doesn't mean you don't start talking about it now, but it's not something we're going to do anytime soon.
Well, by that time, I'll be off all the advisory boards that I've been on too. The Southern Nye County Conservation District, which deals a lot with the salt cedars, especially up in the Beatty area, and the Nuclear Waste and Environmental Advisory Committee, as we're called now. We've done a lot of things with the environment also, and then there's the Water Board and the what else is there?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
I've got planning also, and natural resources, and like I say, we'll have to come back and talk about Yucca Mountain at some point in the future.
That's too late for me to get back into that, but you were talking about the basin, what it is like, but I spoke of that all the time when I would take tours out, and I would explain to the people what our aquifer looked like. There's a closed basin, partially drained, and moving that way towards Tecopa and Shoshone, and trying to explain to people that we don't have that humongous aquifer that some of the realtors had told people about preferred equity days.
There was some nice spin by some realtors in the old days that.
And somebody came up to me and they thought that same thing the last year. And I said, no, please don't say that.
Well, there is what's called the lower carbonate aquifer is below we're pumping out of what's called the alluvial fan, or the valley fill aquifer. But they're interconnected, so it's not new water. It's if you take a glass and you suck off the top or you suck out of the bottom, you're still going to lower that level of your glass. And it's not new water; they're all interconnected, and the Department of Water Resources has said that's all part of our existing perennial yield, and they're not going to consider it as being a new source of water. So why would you spend tens of millions of dollars to drill a very deep well to get to water that's essentially the same water that you can access on a shallower basis?
So there's a ton of, not water, but a ton of subjects that Darrell can speak to us on. We have wells throughout our valley here that we could find out how much water we have in there also, the levels.
Right.
Right. That's we're out of time for today, so that'll be another topic as well as Yucca Mountain. So thank you so much for stopping by, Darrell.
Thanks, John.
I appreciate it. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Oh, hello again. It's me. It's I just have a specific message to talk to you about today about a special presentation that'll be happening on May 22nd at the Nye Community Coalition Activity Center. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart, being a veteran and a former serviceman, Vietnam veteran. It's called Suicide Prevention and Intervention, a Guide to Understanding Suicide. It's something that we have issues with a lot of the returning servicemen and women. And this presentation will be presented by Paul Frederickson. He's a suicide prevention case manager and is affiliated with the VA, Southern Nevada Healthcare Center. So this will be a talk on prevention and intervention. There are a lot of veterans that have PTSD and other issues when they come back from the war zone. And it doesn't have to be going there. You can be a drone operator or anything else affected by it. So if you have the time, or if you know a serviceman that is having issues, ask them if they'd like to go, or maybe if you want to understand what's happening in their life. Please come on May 22nd, the Nye Communities Coalition Activity Center from 1 to 2:30, room 32. There's no charge to attend this course. And the presentation will discuss the recognition of suicide warning signs, myths and facts, statistics and interventions. So thank you for watching this segment, and you'll see these flyers around town. Thank you.